Have you ever noticed how some people treat you differently the moment you stop being easy to control? At first, they seem supportive, they smile, they ask about your day, they pretend to care, but then something changes. The moment you start making your own choices, setting your own boundaries, refusing to be manipulated, their entire approach shifts. They don't just walk away. Instead, they switch strategies. They act concerned, they plant doubts, they bring up your past, they compare you to others, anything to make you question yourself. But here's the real question: are you actually free? Or are you still reacting to these silent mind games without even realizing it? Because manipulation isn't always obvious. It's subtle. It's disguised as love, concern, advice, or even moral superiority. And if you don't see it for what it is, you'll fall into the trap. But not today. Today, we're breaking it down. We're exposing the hidden tactics, 15 specific ways people try to control you without you noticing. Some of these you've probably already encountered. Others, they might be happening right now. And the last one? It's the most dangerous of all. Stay with me, because once you see through these tricks, they lose their power over you. Let's begin. Jason had always been different. He never followed the crowd, never let others dictate his decisions. And for a while, people admired that about him. His friends praised his confidence. His colleagues respected his independence. His family called him strong. Until one day, they didn't. The moment Jason stopped being easy to influence, everything changed. It started small, subtle. A close friend, who once admired his assertiveness, began calling him cold. His boss, who once valued his work, suddenly started questioning his team spirit. Even his family, the people who were supposed to support him no matter what, started saying things like, "You've changed. You used to be more understanding. Why are you being so difficult?" But Jason hadn't changed. He had simply stopped being easy to control. And that's when the real manipulation began. Rumors spread at work. Friends distanced themselves. Invitations stopped coming. Jason wasn't rude. He wasn't cruel. But he wasn't compliant. And to some people, that was enough to make him the enemy. Frustrated, confused, Jason did what many people do in moments like this. That's when he visited Mr. Carter, an old mentor he hadn't spoken to in years. A man known not for his wealth or status, but for his wisdom. When Jason arrived, he poured out everything. The sudden distance, the judgment, the subtle digs. "Why is this happening?" Jason asked. "Why do people turn against you when you stop being easy to manipulate?" Mr. Carter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he led Jason outside, to a small fenced field where two horses stood. One was tied to a post, standing still, calm, predictable. The other, free, but cautious and constantly careful. Mr. Carter walked toward the tied horse. It barely moved, standing obediently in place. Then, he stepped toward the free horse. Immediately, it took a step back, watching, waiting, unpredictable. "Do you see?" Mr. Carter finally spoke. "People are like these horses. When they can tie you down, they feel secure. But when you are free, they grow uncomfortable, because they can't predict you, they can't control you." Jason frowned. "So what do?" Mr. Carter sighed. "They don't try to free you. Instead, they try to break you. They will call you difficult, selfish, arrogant. They will twist your independence into something negative, not because you're wrong, but because your freedom reminds them of their own chains." That night, Jason understood something he had never realized before. People weren't turning against him because he had done something wrong. They were turning against him because they couldn't control him anymore. So Jason stopped explaining himself, stopped seeking approval, stopped letting guilt make his decisions. And in that silence, something powerful happened. The manipulators, they disappeared. The weak-minded, they faded away. And the truly strong, they stayed. Because real strength respects strength. And that is the first step. Recognizing that not everyone wants you to be free. Because the moment you take control of your own life, they either respect you or they fear you? Which one do you think they'll choose? Stay with me, because now we're breaking down exactly how people manipulate you and how to take your power back. Let's begin. Tactic number 1, they pretend to care. Not everyone who asks how you're doing actually cares. Sometimes people aren't looking to support you, they're looking for leverage. And the worst part, you won't see it coming, because they don't show up as enemies. They come disguised as friends, as family. As mentors, they lean in, they listen, they ask the right questions. How have you been? You can talk to me about anything. I just want to help. But weeks, maybe months later, something strange happens. The personal details you shared in confidence, they reappear in conversations. Not as support, not as encouragement, but as weapons. Suddenly, your weaknesses become their ammunition. Your struggles become their leverage, and before you know it, they're using what they know about you to control you. Take Jason, for example. After a rough breakup, he confided in a colleague, thinking he was safe. He spoke about how lost he felt, how much he second-guessed himself. His colleague nodded, listened, reassured him. Jason thought, finally, someone who understands. But then, a few weeks later, the tone shifted. When Jason disagreed with him at work, the response was subtle, but sharp. "Man, I'm just looking out for you. You've been kinda lost lately. Are you sure you're thinking clearly, after everything you told me?" And just like that, Jason's vulnerability became a tool for manipulation. Because now, anytime he pushed back, anytime he questioned things, his past struggles were thrown back at him. A reminder that, at his weakest moment, he let someone in. So why do people do this? Because knowledge is power. And the more they know about you, the easier you are to control. People who pretend to care aren't looking to help. They're looking to own real estate inside your mind. They want you to second-guess yourself, to feel exposed, to trust them just enough so they can shape your decisions. And the worst part, it works, because when someone knows you, you listen to them, you believe them, even when their words are designed to manipulate. But here's the truth. No one has power over you unless you give it to them. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, be careful who you let inside your mind. Not every conversation deserves full access to your life. Not every concern is genuine, because real care isn't invasive. Real care doesn't weaponize your struggles against you. Real care doesn't come with strings attached. Think of it like a house. Your mind is your home, your space. You don't let strangers wander into your bedroom and go through your drawers, right? Then why would you let just anyone have access to your thoughts, fears, and emotions? Because once they're inside, once they see what makes you weak, they own a piece of you, and one day they'll use it. So from now on, watch who you trust. Not everyone who asks how are you actually wants to hear the answer. Some, they just want to use it against you later. And the best way to fight back? Be selective with what you share. Set boundaries. Observe who truly listens and who collects information. Because the moment you start guarding your mind like you guard your home, you become untouchable. And this is just one of the many ways people try to manipulate you. But it doesn't stop here. Because if they can't manipulate you with false concern, they'll break you down in other ways. Which brings us to tactic number 2. Tactic number 2, they make you feel useless. They don't attack you outright. They don't scream at you. They don't tell you to stop trying. Instead, they chip away at you, slowly, subtly, with every word, every comment, every helpful piece of advice. That's not really your strength, is it? I mean, sure, you could try, but don't get your hopes up. You always mess things up when you rush. At first, you brush it off, but then you start second-guessing yourself. You hesitate. You overthink. You wonder if maybe, just maybe, they're right. And before you know it, you stop believing in yourself. That's how it works. They don't break you with a single blow. They wear you down over time, until one day, you stop making decisions on your own. You start waiting for their approval. Because they've made you feel like you can't trust yourself, like you need them to guide you. That's the trap. And once you're in it, they control you. Take Liam, for example. For years, he was confident, independent, a problem solver. Then he started dating someone who was always just trying to help. At first, it was small things. Are you sure you want to wear that? You always get flustered when you handle money. I don't want you to get hurt again. Maybe you should let me take care of it. Liam laughed it off, but over time, it started sinking in. The next time he had to make a financial decision, he hesitated. The next time he picked out clothes, he questioned his choice. The next time he had a tough situation, he didn't trust his own instincts. And when he finally realized what was happening, it hit him like a truck. He wasn't the same person anymore. He wasn't confident. He wasn't decisive. He had become dependent. Because that's what manipulation does. It erases you while making you think it's your fault. So why do people do this? Because control isn't about stopping you. It's about making you stop yourself. It's easier to rule over someone who believes they're weak. Someone who doubts every step they take. Someone who looks to others for permission to exist. That's why they criticize you. That's why they make little suggestions. That's why they remind you of every mistake, every flaw, every tiny imperfection. Because the more you doubt yourself, the easier you are to lead. But here's the truth. No one owns your confidence unless you give it to them. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Translation: don't let their opinions shape your belief in yourself. Because the moment you stop needing their validation, you become free. Imagine a glass of water. If you shake it, it spills. If you tip it over, it breaks. But if you freeze it, if you make it solid, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't move. It doesn't break. That's what your confidence should be, unshakable. So the next time someone questions your abilities, let them. The next time someone subtly suggests you're not good enough, smile, because their words only have power if you believe them. And once you stop believing, they lose. This is just the second tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll try something even more insidious. Let's get to tactic number 3. Tactic number 3, they manipulate you with love. Love is supposed to be unconditional. Real love doesn't come with rules, restrictions, or ultimatums. But manipulators, they see love as a tool, a weapon, a bargaining chip. They don't love you for who you are. They love you for what you do for them. And if you stop meeting their expectations, if you stop bending, stop obeying, stop playing their game, the love disappears. You know, if you really loved me, you'd do this. I just don't feel as close to you anymore. Maybe it's because you've changed. I don't think I can keep doing this if you keep acting this way. You don't want to lose them, so you start changing. You walk on eggshells, you shrink yourself. You become someone else just to keep their love. But here's the brutal truth. If love is conditions, it isn't love. It's control. Take Emma, for example. She was in a relationship that, from the outside, looked perfect. Her boyfriend was charming, attentive, and always knew what to say. But slowly, things started to shift. Whenever she disagreed with him, he wouldn't argue. He wouldn't yell. He'd just pull away, get distant, cold, detached. At first, she thought maybe he was just having a bad day, but then it became a pattern. Whenever she expressed her own opinions, his affection disappeared. Whenever she made a decision without his input, he'd withdraw. Whenever she set a boundary, he'd say things like, "I just don't feel like you care about us the same way I do." So she adjusted. She stopped pushing back. She let him make more of the decisions. She became smaller to keep the relationship alive. And one day, she looked in the mirror and realized she wasn't herself anymore. She was who he wanted her to be. That's how it happens. They make you fear losing them. So you change, not because you want to, but because you're afraid not to. And that's exactly what they want. Why do they do this? Because when love is conditional, it keeps you under their control. They don't have to force you to obey. They just have to threaten to leave. They make you crave their approval. They make you dependent on their affection. And when you start relying on them to feel worthy, they own you. But here's the truth: real love doesn't need to be earned. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In other words, the moment you start measuring your worth by someone else's validation, you've already lost. Because real love doesn't ask you to change who you are. It doesn't punish you for being independent. It doesn't use fear and withdrawal as a way to keep you in line. Imagine a bird in a cage. It's still alive, it can still move, but it's not free. Because the moment it tries to spread its wings, to fly on its own, it's reminded of the bars. That's what conditional love does. It keeps you in a mental cage, one that's invisible, but just as restricting. So how do you break free? You stop chasing their approval. You stop fearing their absence. You stop mistaking control for care. And when you do that, they lose all power over you. Because the scariest thing to a manipulator is someone who doesn't fear being alone. This is just the third tactic they use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll go even deeper. They'll use your past against you, which brings us to tactic number 4. Tactic number 4, they constantly remind you of your past. Your past should be a lesson, a stepping stone, but to a manipulator, your past is a weapon. They don't care about your growth. They don't care about how much you've changed. They only care about keeping you chained to who you used to be. Remember when you messed that up? You always do this. It's just who you are. After everything you did, you think you have the right to complain? No matter how much you evolve, no matter how much progress you make, they will drag you back to the worst version of yourself. Because as long as you feel guilty, as long as you feel undeserving, you're easier to control. Take Nathan, for example. Years ago, he made mistakes in his career, big ones. He trusted the wrong people, took the wrong risks. But he learned from it. He rebuilt himself. Now, years later, he's in a new job, a leadership position, but his boss never lets him forget. Nathan, just don't mess this up like last time. We all remember what happened before, right? You should be grateful to even have this chance. At first, Nathan ignored it, but over time, the words started weighing on him. Every decision he made, he hesitated. Every new opportunity, he second-guessed himself, not because he wasn't capable, but because someone else had convinced him he wasn't allowed to move on. And that's exactly what manipulators want. They want you stuck in your worst moments. Because the more ashamed you feel, the less power you have. So why do they do this? Because guilt is paralyzing. If you feel like you owe them, you won't challenge them. If you feel like you're still making up for past mistakes, you won't demand respect. If they can keep you apologizing, they can keep you obedient. It's not about making peace with the past. It's about trapping you in it. But here's the truth. You are not who you used to be. Seneca once said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." You are not obligated to live in the shadow of your past. You are allowed to move forward. You are allowed to change. And if someone keeps reminding you of your mistakes, it's because they fear your growth. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. At the bottom, you stumbled, you fell, you struggled. But now you're higher, stronger, smarter, and instead of climbing with you, they're standing below, yelling about the time you tripped, because they don't want you to see how far you've come. And the moment you realize that, they lose their grip on you. So the next time someone tries to pull you back into your past, stand tall, look them in the eye, and simply say, "I don't live there anymore." This is just the fourth tactic manipulators use. And if this doesn't work, they'll push even harder. They'll compare you to others to make you feel like you'll never be good enough. Which brings us to tactic number 5. Tactic number 5, they use comparison to break you. There's a simple way to make someone feel small. Compare them, not to their past self, not to their potential, but to someone else, someone better, someone smarter, someone who, in their eyes, is everything you're not. Why can't you be more like them? Look at what they've accomplished. What's your excuse? You used to be ahead, but now you're falling behind. At first, it seems harmless. Maybe they just want to push you, motivate you, but that's not what this is. This isn't about helping you grow. It's about making you doubt yourself. Because the moment you feel like you're not enough, you become easier to control. Take Ryan, for example. He had always been proud of his work. He knew his strengths. He was confident in his abilities. But his boss had a different plan. Whenever Ryan achieved something, it was never enough. Good job, but did you see what Mark did? You're improving, but you're still not at Sarah's level. If you want to get promoted, you need to start working more like Daniel. Over time, Ryan stopped feeling proud of his work because no matter what he did, someone else was always better. So he started pushing harder, not because he wanted to, but because he felt like he had to. And that's how they get you. By making you believe that your worth is tied to someone else's achievements. So why do they do this? Because when you chase someone else's success, you forget about your own. They don't want you focused on your progress. They want you distracted by someone else's journey, because as long as you're looking at them, you're not looking at yourself. But here's the truth. Your value isn't measured by someone else's life, Marcus Aurelius said. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Not on their success, not on their timeline, not on their approval. Imagine running a race. You're on your own path, your own speed, but instead of looking forward, you keep looking to the side, comparing your pace to everyone else's, and what happens? You lose focus, you slow down, you trip over your own feet. That's exactly what they want, to keep you so distracted by others that you never realize how much you're already capable of. So the next time someone tries to compare you, let them, because their words only have power if you believe them. This is just the fifth tactic manipulators use, and if this one doesn't work, they'll drain your energy until you have nothing left to fight with, which brings us to tactic number 6. Tactic number 6, they intentionally wear you down. Not all control looks like force. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. They don't need to yell. They don't need to threaten. All they have to do is keep pushing, more pressure, more demands, more stress, until you reach a point where you're too tired to resist. I need you to do this, right now. Why are you always so difficult? Come on, just do this one thing for me. At first, you push back, you say no, you set boundaries. But they don't stop, they keep coming. A constant wave of expectations, criticisms, and guilt, until one day you give in. Not because you agree, not because you want to, but because it's easier than fighting. Take Sophia, for example. She started a new job full of excitement. At first, her boss was supportive, encouraging, but soon the pressure started creeping in. She was expected to answer emails at all hours, to pick up extra work without question, to be available always. And whenever she tried to push back, the guilt trip started. I thought you were a team player. We're all counting on you. Don't let us down. If you really cared, you'd make the effort. She wanted to say no, but every time she did, it became a battle. A battle she didn't have the energy to keep fighting. So eventually, she stopped. She said yes, not because she wanted to, but because it was easier than resisting. That's the trap, because once they wear you down, they own you. So why do they do this? Because a tired mind is an easy mind. When you're drained, when you're overwhelmed, when you're on the edge of burnout, you don't fight back, you don't question things. You just comply. That's what they want. Not for you to agree with them, just for you to be too exhausted to say no. But here's the truth. Saying yes to everything is the fastest way to lose control of your life. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Translation: you control your own energy, not them, not their expectations, not their constant, never-ending demands. Imagine a phone battery. When it's full, you feel strong, capable, in control. But if you let everyone else drain it, work, relationships, family, society, by the time you need your energy, there's nothing left. That's what they count on. That's why they never stop pushing. Because the moment you're too tired to fight, they win. So the next time someone tries to overwhelm you, pause, breathe, and remember, you don't owe anyone your exhaustion. This is just the 6th tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll switch their strategy again. They'll pretend to be your biggest supporter while secretly working against you, which brings us to tactic number 7. Tactic number 7, they pretend to be the good guy. Not all manipulators look like villains. Some wear a different mask. They don't pressure you. They don't guilt trip you, at least not at first. Instead, they play the long game. They earn your trust. They become your safe place. They make you feel like you owe them, and then they cash in. You know, I'd never do anything to hurt you. I've always been there for you, haven't I? I just want what's best for you. And because they've been so good to you, you believe them, you stop questioning, you let your guard down. And that's when the real manipulation begins. Take Daniel, for example. He had a mentor, someone he trusted completely. This mentor gave him advice, helped him through tough decisions, always looked out for him. Or at least, that's what Daniel thought, because slowly, things started changing. The advice started coming with conditions. The support started feeling like control. Whenever Daniel made a decision on his own, the response was cold. I just don't want to see you make a mistake. I thought we were closer than this. After everything I've done for you. At first, Daniel ignored it. But the more it happened, the more he realized this wasn't kindness, it was leverage. Because every good thing this person had done for him came with a price, and that's exactly how they get you. They make themselves irreplaceable, so that when the manipulation starts, you're already too deep to walk away. So why do they do this? Because trust is power. The moment you believe someone has your best interest at heart, you stop looking for red flags. You start listening without questioning, and that's what they count on. Because when someone feels like a hero, they can get away with things a villain never could. But here's the truth. Real kindness doesn't come with strings attached. Seneca once said, "He who receives a benefit with gratitude repays the first installment on his debt." Meaning, gratitude is enough. You don't owe anyone your blind obedience. You don't have to repay kindness with submission. Imagine a wolf in sheep's clothing. At first, it blends in. It looks safe, familiar. But over time, its true nature starts to show. The mask slips, the disguise fades, and by then, it's already too close. That's why the most dangerous manipulators aren't the ones who threaten you. They're the ones who earn your trust first. So the next time someone positions themselves as your protector, ask yourself, are they helping you or controlling you? Because real support, it doesn't feel like a debt. This is just the 7th tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll take things even further. They'll rewrite reality to make you doubt your own mind, which brings us to tactic number 8. Tactic number 8, they distort reality. Manipulation isn't always about control. Sometimes it's about confusion. Because if they can make you doubt what's real, if they can make you question yourself, they don't need to force you to obey. You'll do it on your own. They twist your words. They rewrite history. They make you look like the problem. I never said that. You're overreacting. That's not what happened. You must be remembering it wrong. And the worst part, over time, you start to believe them. Take Mia, for example. She was in a group of friends she thought she could trust. But one day, during a casual conversation, one of them made fun of her in front of everyone. A subtle jab, a little joke at her expense. She laughed it off, but inside, she felt it. The next time it happened, it was worse. More people, more laughter. And when she finally spoke up, when she said, "Hey, that wasn't cool," they flipped the script. "Wow, you're so sensitive. It was just a joke." Nobody else thought it was a big deal. Now, Mia was the problem, not the joke, not the people who made her feel small. Her. And that's how it works. They don't just humiliate you. They make you feel like you deserve it. So why do they do this? Because when you feel small, you stop standing up for yourself. When you doubt your own experience, they don't need to silence you. You'll silence yourself, and once that happens, they can say anything, do anything, and you won't fight back. But here's the truth. Reality is not up for debate. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Translation: trust your own perception. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone crosses a line, they probably meant to. And if they try to convince you otherwise, that's the red flag. Imagine a funhouse mirror. It distorts your reflection. It stretches and twists reality until you don't recognize yourself anymore. That's what they're doing to your mind. But if you step back, if you see the mirror for what it is, you realize the distortion was never real. So the next time someone tries to rewrite history, tries to make you doubt yourself, pause, stand your ground, and say, "I know what I saw, I know what I felt, and I won't be fooled." Because the moment you trust yourself, they lose. This is just the 8th tactic manipulators use, and if this one doesn't work, they'll switch to something even worse. Tactic number 9, they weaponize shame. Some people don't need force, they don't need threats, they just need to make you feel ashamed. Because when you feel shame, you shrink, you stop speaking up, you give up your power. And that's exactly what they want. I can't believe you'd say something like that. Everyone thinks you're embarrassing yourself. You should be grateful I'm even telling you this. At first, it feels like they're helping you, like they're just pointing out something for your own good. But deep down, it doesn't feel like help. It feels like control. Take David, for example. He was confident, outspoken, never afraid to say what he thought. But one day, during a meeting, his boss made a snide comment, something small, almost a joke. "Wow, David, you really love the sound of your own voice, don't you?" Everyone laughed. David forced a smile, but after that, he hesitated before speaking up. The next time he had an idea, he paused, because in the back of his mind, the thought was there. What if I sound stupid? And that's how it works. They make you feel like your natural instincts, your confidence, your opinions, your voice, are something to be ashamed of. And once you start doubting yourself, they don't need to silence you. You do it for them. So why do they do this? Because shame is a leash. The moment you let it wrap around you, you stop pushing back. You stop standing up for yourself. You start thinking, maybe they're right. And that's exactly what they want. But here's the truth. You don't owe anyone your shame. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." Meaning, shame only controls you if you let it. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack. At first, you don't even realize how much weight is in it. But with every step, it gets heavier and heavier until eventually, you can't move forward. That's what shame does. It weighs you down. It keeps you stuck. And if you never stop to take the backpack off, you'll never see how light you were supposed to be. So the next time someone tries to use shame against you, don't shrink, don't apologize, don't carry their weight. Stand tall, look them in the eye, and say, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Because the moment you refuse to feel small, they lose. This is just the 9th tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll take it even further. Tactic number 10, they twist your words against you. Some people don't argue to understand, they argue to win, and when they can't win fairly, they change the rules. They take what you said, your exact words, and they twist them into something else, something that makes you look like the villain, something that makes them look like the victim. So what you're saying is, you don't care about my feelings. Wow, I can't believe you'd be that selfish. You literally just said that. Are you seriously denying it now? And suddenly, you're not defending your point anymore. You're defending yourself. Take Olivia, for example. She was having a conversation with a close friend. She brought up something that had been bothering her. She said, "I feel like sometimes you don't really listen when I talk." A normal, honest statement, but her friend's response? "So you're calling me a bad friend?" That wasn't what Olivia meant. That wasn't what she said. But now, the conversation wasn't about the issue anymore. Now, she was on the defensive. "No, that's not what I meant. I wasn't attacking you. I just wanted to talk about how I feel." But it was too late. The focus had shifted. And instead of standing her ground, she was now apologizing for something she never even said. That's how they get you. They don't need to prove you wrong. They just need to make you look wrong. So why do they do this? Because if they can control the conversation, they can control you. They don't need to win the argument. They just need to make you doubt yourself. And once you start second-guessing your own words, they've already won. But here's the truth. Your words belong to you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake, I will gladly change, but I won't be manipulated." Meaning, you can listen to feedback, you can adjust if you're wrong, but you don't have to accept false narratives. Imagine a mirror. When you look into it, you see yourself clearly. But if someone warps that mirror, distorts it just enough, suddenly you start seeing something different. Something that isn't you. And if you're not careful, you might start believing it. That's what they're doing. They're distorting the reflection of what you said. But the moment you step back, the moment you trust yourself over their manipulation, the illusion shatters. So the next time someone twists your words, pause. Don't rush to explain yourself. Don't let them drag you into their version of reality. Instead, calmly say, "That's not what I said, and you know it." Then, walk away, because when they can't twist your words, they lose. This is just the 10th tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll take it even further. Tactic number 11. They overwhelm you with information. Manipulation doesn't always look like deception. Sometimes it looks like too much truth, all at once. Because when someone throws too much information at you, when they drown you in details, arguments, and endless talking points, you don't know what to focus on. You don't know what's real. And that's exactly what they want. You don't understand the full picture. There are so many layers to this, you're oversimplifying. If you really knew what was going on, you'd see why I'm right. At first, it seems like they're just being thorough. Maybe they do have more experience. Maybe they do know things you don't. But over time, you realize it's not about facts, it's about control. Take Liam, for example. He was negotiating a contract at work. He wanted a simple, fair deal, something clear. But when he brought up his concerns, his employer flooded him with complexity. Well, if you look at Section 1(b) of the terms and cross-reference it with the company's long-term strategy, legally speaking, there are about 5 different factors at play here, so you have to understand the nuances. It's complicated. Let's not rush this. The more they talked, the more Liam felt lost. So instead of pushing back, instead of standing his ground, he agreed. Not because he was convinced, but because he was too overwhelmed to argue. And that's how they win. They don't need to prove you wrong. They just need to make sure you're too confused to resist. So why do they do this? Because an overloaded mind is a weak mind. When you're drowning in details, when you can't keep up with their words, you shut down, you let them take the lead. And once you do that, they have all the power. But here's the truth. More information doesn't always mean more truth. Epictetus once said, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." Meaning, clarity beats complexity. If someone can't explain something simply, they probably don't want you to understand it. Imagine trying to find your way out of a forest. If the path is clear, you move forward confidently. But if someone hands you 20 different maps, each contradicting the last, suddenly you're stuck. That's exactly what they're doing. They're making the road so confusing that you stop moving altogether. And when you stop, they get to decide which way you go. So the next time someone drowns you in details, Pause, don't let them pull you into mental quicksand. Instead, say, let's keep this simple. What's the core issue here? And if they can't answer, that tells you everything. This is just the 11th tactic manipulators use, and if this one doesn't work, they'll shift strategies again. Tactic number 12, they break you down in small steps. Manipulation doesn't always come as one big demand. Sometimes it happens slowly, step by step, until one day you wake up and realize you're not in control anymore. They don't ask for everything at once. They chip away at you, a little favor here, a small compromise there, nothing too big, nothing that feels like a red flag, until suddenly you're doing things you never agreed to. Can you just help me this one time? It's not a big deal, right? You've already done this much. What's one more step? At first, it all seems reasonable, but by the time you see what's really happening, it's already too late. Take Ethan, for example. He started dating someone who seemed great. At first, they asked for small things. Hey, could you text me when you get home? Seemed harmless. Then, actually, I'd feel better if you texted me throughout the day. Okay, no problem. Then, why were you out so late? I just worry about you. It felt like care, but little by little, it turned into control. Now, Ethan wasn't making his own decisions anymore. He was checking in. He was explaining himself. He was asking for permission. And the worst part, he never even realized it was happening. That's how this tactic works. It's not one big ask, it's 100 tiny ones, each step feeling too small to question, until suddenly, you've given up everything. So why do they do this? Because slow control is harder to resist. If they demanded everything from you at once, you'd say no. But when it happens gradually, it feels like your own choice. That's what they count on, because by the time you notice, you already feel too deep to back out. But here's the truth. A small compromise today can become a massive loss of control tomorrow. Seneca once said, "He who is slow to believe anything is safe from deception," meaning, question everything. If someone keeps pushing you, inch by inch, towards something you wouldn't normally agree to, pause. Ask yourself, would I have said yes to this if they asked me on day one? Because if the answer is no, then you know exactly what's happening. Imagine a frog in boiling water. If you drop it in when the water's already hot, it jumps out immediately. But if you heat the water slowly, it never realizes what's happening. That's how they get you. That's why they take their time. Because the slower the control, the less likely you are to fight back. So the next time someone asks for just one more small thing, stop, step back, and say, actually no. Because when they can't lead you step by step, they lose. This is just the 12th tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll hit you with another strategy. Tactic number 13, they make you doubt your own value. The easiest way to control someone, make them believe they're not enough. Not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. Because when someone doubts their own value, they stop standing up for themselves, they settle for less, and worst of all, they become dependent on the very person who made them feel that way. I'm just being honest with you. Nobody else will. You'd be lost without me. You really think you can do this on your own? It doesn't start as an attack. It starts as helpful advice, as constructive criticism, until suddenly you're questioning everything about yourself. Take Noah, for example. He always believed in himself, until he met someone who slowly chipped away at that confidence. At first, it was small comments. I just want to make sure you're being realistic. Then it became more direct. I'm only telling you this because I care, but you're not really that talented. And before he knew it, Noah wasn't sure of anything anymore. He stopped taking risks, stopped speaking up, because every time he did, a voice in the back of his head whispered, "What if they're right?" And that's exactly what manipulators want, to make you question yourself so much that you need them to tell you who you are. So why do they do this? Because when someone doubts their worth, they don't leave. They don't fight back, they stay stuck, because they believe that without this person, they'd be nothing. And that's how control works. They don't have to trap you. They just have to make sure you never believe you can walk away. But here's the truth, your value is not up for debate. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears." Meaning, no one can make you feel unworthy unless you let them. Imagine a sculptor carving away at a statue, chipping off pieces, little by little, and if you let them keep going, eventually there's nothing left. That's what they're doing. They're taking tiny pieces of your confidence until all that's left is someone who doesn't even recognize themselves. But the moment you refuse to let them carve away at you, you take your power back. So the next time someone makes you doubt yourself, pause, ask yourself, would I talk to a friend the way they talk to me? And if the answer is no, then maybe they're not really a friend. Because real support, it builds you up, it never breaks you down. This is just the 13th tactic manipulators use, and if this one doesn't work, they'll take it even further. Tactic number 14, they pretend to be more ethical than you. Some people don't manipulate with force. They manipulate with morality. They don't argue. They don't push. They just make you feel like you're less than them. Less kind, less thoughtful, less ethical, and before you know it, you're doing whatever they want, not because you agree, but because you feel guilty if you don't. I would never do something like that. If you were a good person, you'd understand. I just hold myself to a higher standard. I wish you did too. It's not a direct attack, it's a subtle game, and you never realize you're playing it until you're losing. Take Emma, for example. She had a friend who always seemed morally superior. Every conversation, every situation. This friend found a way to be the better person. At first, Emma admired it. She wanted to be more thoughtful, more caring, but over time, it started feeling like a weapon. If Emma didn't agree with her, she wasn't just wrong. She was selfish. If she set a boundary, she wasn't just standing up for herself. She was cold and unkind, and if she ever tried to push back, the response was always the same. "Wow, I thought you were better than this." And just like that, Emma felt small. She started second-guessing herself, started apologizing when she didn't need to, and eventually, she stopped making decisions for herself. Because every time she tried, that voice in her head whispered, "What if I'm the bad guy?" And that's exactly what they want. They don't need to control your actions. They just need to control your guilt. So why do they do this? Because guilt is one of the strongest chains. If they can make you feel bad enough, you'll start following their lead. Not because they forced you, but because you're afraid of disappointing them. And once you fear that judgment, they own you. But here's the truth. Real morality doesn't come with manipulation. Epictetus once said, "If virtue promises happiness, progress, and peace, then whoever is virtuous should not be anxious." Meaning, true morality doesn't need to prove itself. If someone is truly ethical, truly good, they don't need to shame others into following them. Imagine a scale. On one side, guilt, on the other, freedom. And every time you give in to their moral superiority, they add a little more weight to your guilt, until one day it tips, and you don't feel worthy of making your own choices anymore. But the moment you realize what's happening, the moment you stop letting their opinion define your worth, the scale balances and you take your power back. So the next time someone makes you feel less than, ask yourself, are they truly moral or just manipulative? Because real ethics, they don't control, they guide. And if someone's morality is used as a weapon, it's not morality, it's manipulation. This is just the 14th tactic manipulators use. And if this one doesn't work, they'll go even deeper. Tactic number 15, they use your compassion against you. Some people don't need threats, they don't need force, they just need your kindness. Because if they can make you feel responsible for them, if they can make you believe that saying no makes you heartless, then they don't need to ask. You'll offer. And once that happens, they own you. I just don't know what I'd do without you. No one else cares like you do. I hate to ask, but I really need you this one time. And at first, it feels good to help. But over time, it stops feeling like a choice. Take Ben, for example. He had a friend, Alex, who always seemed to be in crisis mode. Every time Alex needed something, it was an emergency, rent money, a last-minute favor, emotional support at 3 a.m. And every time, Ben was there, because that's who he was. He cared. But one day, Ben said no, and suddenly, the friendship changed. Wow, I guess I can't count on you after all. I thought you were different. If I was in your position, I'd never do this to you. And in that moment, Ben felt it. That sinking feeling in his gut, that guilt pressing down on him. And before he could stop himself, he caved, not because he wanted to help, but because he didn't want to feel guilty. And that's exactly what manipulators want. They don't just use your kindness. They use your fear of being the bad guy. So why do they do this? Because guilt is easier to control than force. If they can make you believe that saying no makes you selfish, you'll never say it. You'll keep giving, keep sacrificing, until one day you have nothing left. But here's the truth. Compassion is a gift, not a contract. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Be tolerant with others, but strict with yourself." Meaning, be kind, be understanding, but set limits. Because if someone truly needs you, they won't punish you for setting a boundary. Imagine a bucket of water. Every time you help someone, you pour a little out. And that's fine, as long as you refill it. But what happens when someone keeps taking and never lets you fill it back up? Eventually, you run dry. And that's not kindness. That's self-destruction. So the next time someone makes you feel guilty for saying no, ask yourself, would they do the same for me? Because real friendship, real love, real support, it doesn't demand, it appreciates. And if someone's need is just a way to control you, then it's not need, it's manipulation. And you deserve better. So here's what we've learned. Manipulators don't always use force. They use subtle tactics. They guilt you, they twist your words, they make you doubt yourself. They control you without ever looking like the bad guy. And that's what makes it dangerous, because if you don't see it happening, how do you fight back? The answer, you master yourself. That's what Stoicism teaches. You can't control other people. You can't force them to change. But what you can control is how you respond. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And that's the key, because when you stop reacting to their manipulation, when you see the game but refuse to play it, they lose. The strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It isn't the one with the most control. It's the one who refuses to be controlled. So remember this, you don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to shrink yourself just to make others comfortable. You are enough, and the moment you realize that, no one can manipulate you ever again. Now, if this podcast helped you see things more clearly, if it made you think, if it gave you value, do me a favor, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Because the more people we wake up to these tactics, the less power manipulators have. And that's how we take our power back. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.